It's been my pleasure to know her because I knew her when it was, Breeze was her nickname as a male. And it's really been interesting to me to see her go through this change and then to be able to read it. I found myself quite emotional about it because I've you know, it's intimate change watching somebody go through it. I think she did a great job of putting it into words. I don't know how many people here have read it, but I couldn't put it down, frankly. And so that's good. And I think that she'll have a good opportunity to tell you what these different terms mean and so forth. And at this time, I'd like to bring Danielle Bergen up here.
Thank you. Okay. Aloha, everyone. And thank you. Quite an honor to be here tonight, I have to tell you. I was invited to another book club last Thursday and drove a few miles down the road to Hana, way out in Haiku, off the road. Had no idea where I was going. But I found the place, so this is nice. This is nice. This is only the second time I've actually been in a room where more people that have attended have read my book than most of the time are book signings. So I'm telling them about it. So what I'd like to do tonight is I'd just like to talk a little bit in the beginning about my book. I'll do some selected readings. And then I thought what we could do is look at some of these terms up here. Okay? We'll look at a couple of them first. Transgender, of course, is like an umbrella category. Okay? So someone who's like, I would be considered transgender. Basically, someone who's transgender has the mind of one gender and the body of the other. But it doesn't necessarily mean specifically to transsexuals, although I'm a transsexual woman. Okay, so I actually live as a woman. I was born as a male. But transgender is an umbrella term. It can include cross-dressers. It can include drag queens. It can include anyone who's gender variant, anyone who in their mind is portraying themselves as the opposite gender. Now, for example, a cross-dresser might just be a straight male who just likes dressing up in women's clothes and maybe meeting with some of the other guys dressed up in women's clothes and going out to dinner and having fun, but they have no intentions at all of ever changing genders. They're just doing it as either a fetish or something to excite them or just something to make them feel comfortable. So as I said, I'm a transsexual, meaning that I actually transitioned at one point from male to female, as you read in the book. And gender versus sexuality, and the reason I'm putting this up here, is that it's two really completely different groups. Now, transgender, it comes at the end of the LGBT, which is the lesbian, bisexual, gay, transgender grouping that we're all in. So we were added a little ways down the road. But they're all, the first parts of it are involved with sexuality, okay? Gender is basically like you're a man, you're a woman, okay? We are knowing that this is who we are. I'm a woman now. But sexuality is about who we love, who we're going to love. So someone who is gay, okay, if they're male, they're going to love another male. If they're female, they're going to love another woman. Someone who's straight is going to love, you know, males will love females, females love males. Someone who is bisexual, you know, they get the best of all the worlds, so to speak. So, but gender really, it's who you are. And so that was what my conundrum was. When I was little, when I was 3 years old, I realized up here that there was something different about me. I knew that I had the body of a boy. I knew that. I started learning that about gender, but in my mind I was a girl. And I would often get into discussions with my mother about it. And I know a lot of you have read the book, but I love reading some of these little parts of it here. This happened when I was 5 years old. Whenever I spoke about my gender to my mother, she always dismissed it as silliness. After all, Looking at her from her viewpoint, how could she actually take me seriously? The fact was, I had a penis between my legs. But that did not stop me from trying to persuade my mother. I remember an incident about a year later. I was 5 at the time, and my baby sister Maureen, recently born, was almost a year old. We were in the kitchen, and my mother was giving my sister a bath in the kitchen sink. I asked if I could help. While Mom was bathing Maureen, I watched, and then helped by handing her the soap and the washcloth. All of a sudden, I noticed something as Mom was rinsing my sister, that something was different about my sister. I asked, Mommy, how come Maureen doesn't have a pee-pee? Well, Danny, said Mom, Maureen's a little girl. Little girls don't have pee-pees. I looked quizzically at my mother. But Mom, I have a pee-pee. I'm a little girl, I said with assurance. She looked back at me. Not this again, Danny. How many times have I told you? You're a little boy. I don't care what you think is in that little head of yours. You are a little boy. God made you into a little boy, and God does not make mistakes, she said to me firmly. And I frowned. No, Mommy. God is trying to fool you and trying to fool me. I'm really a little girl. You'll see. I'm going to grow up as a little girl. So my mom and I used to go round and round with this at a very young age. And then I finally realized it would get her really upset, and I wasn't going to talk to her about it anymore because I was starting to get punished for that. And then I went to parochial school. So when I was in parochial school, I was immersed in the Catholic religion. And I learned all about catechism. I learned all about everything. And I heard that God was perfect and makes us perfect. And I had the body of a boy, so I must be perfectly a boy. And I even tried to ask some of my friends sometimes, you know, some of my guy friends, just kind of slyly, like, you know, did you ever wish that maybe you were born a girl? And every single one of them would, like, look at me going, what? Are you crazy? Why would I ever want to be a girl? You don't think that, do you? And of course I would go, oh, no, I don't think that. Not at all. No, why? I mean, I just thought maybe you're asking, you know, I thought maybe you did because you have like 5 sisters. So I thought maybe you thought about it. But every time I backed off of it, and not one person, not one friend of mine even ever thought that, ever thought it. So finally, you know, with all the Catholic religion and everything, parochial school, I kept thinking, okay, and I pray to God all the time, you know, every time I went to bed at night, God, just let me wake up in the morning as a little girl. Let my life be exactly the same, have the same parents, but just let me be a little girl. And every night I would go to bed a little boy, and every morning I would wake up and still a little boy in my body, but my mind was still female. So then I thought, well, you know, I'm learning about being an altar boy. I'm learning about all this. I'm learning about how powerful God is. I'm learning about the Catholic religion, and I realized, oh, there's these people in the Catholic religion called martyrs, and they were like, you know, they did these things. They had these terribly oppressed lives, and then they were spiritually delivered at the, you know, end of their life or at some point in their life by God. And I kept thinking, that must be it. I must be living as a martyr, and one day, God is either going to turn me into a little girl, or He's going to make me just want to be a boy, and it would be that much easier. Because as I got to be towards puberty, I started thinking it would be so much easier if this person inside me named Danielle would just go away and leave me alone. You know, because I learned how to be a boy, and I said it was just, every day was just that craziness. So, as I said in the book, I learned to pray early in life. And I did so perhaps more often than not because of my confusion around my gender. My relationship with God seemed strong, although He did not answer my prayers and make me a girl when I was younger. As I grew older, I felt convinced that He would help me be a boy, since He created me with the body of one. I figured if God gave me a girl's brain because He wanted me to suffer like those martyrs that I learned about in school. I identified with all those who suffered. I was convinced that my life was supposed to be one of struggle, eventually overcoming with God's help and being delivered into one mind and one body as a male. This was how I looked at things, and I was blossoming into this average boy, grateful for my alter ego, but beginning to have her lose power over me. And then the more I tried to be a boy, at times, the more Danielle disappeared. But then I hit puberty, and I just, you know, if I could cross-dress, I would cross-dress all the time. You know, as I got to high school, I became an athlete. Most transgender or transsexual male to females like myself we'll overcompensate our masculinity just to hide completely who we are. So people just think, you know, we're one of the guys, we're one of the people there. You'll find a lot of transgender women who used to be policemen or firemen or forest rangers or, you know, some mechanics, you know, some really masculine jobs, right? And there's some athletes out there as well. So I was a high school athlete, and I just loved sports. It was a great outlet for me. And once I got in high school and I found alcohol, then I realized alcohol was also a relief. It would just get rid of all those feelings of me wanting to be a girl. It would numb me completely. So I used to love to drink all the time. When I got to college, I added not only marijuana, not only speed, but I added cocaine as well. And when I moved to Maui, I was doing all of those. In fact, the reason I came to Maui was because after I graduated from college, I moved back home for a while. And I was living at home and living with my sisters. I had 5 sisters at that time. There's like 11 of us, but 5 of my sisters were at home. And my parents, so when the girls were at school or my parents were at work, I would eventually call in sick every once in a while. I would grow facial hair to try and not be Danielle, but I would shave off my beard and I would go out and I'd grab my sister's clothes and I would just go out around town. I don't know how many times I almost got caught. I realized eventually I'm going to get caught and I needed to get away. My whole life was spent running away from who I am. And so I moved to Maui. And when I got to Maui, I figured, okay, I just leave Danielle in New York. I'm in Maui. That's not how it worked. I drank a lot. I started doing more drugs over here. I really became, you know, this guy who was like all into sports. I knew all kinds of statistics. I used to be like the guy's guy around sports and everything. But all my friends, all my real close friends were women. One of them sitting right over there. Robin has known me ever since I got to the island. And Robin and I were really good friends. I hung out with a lot of women. Robin's sister Pam lived here back then. Pam and I were close friends. I mean, I had a couple close male friends, but most of my group were women because I always felt like I was just part of them. I felt comfortable, but I could never tell anyone why. You know, I could never tell anyone why. So even though I would pretty much keep this part of me, this gender identity disorder, numbed by alcohol and drugs, eventually I would get so worked up because I wouldn't be able to dress or be Danielle that all of a sudden I would call in sick for work for like a few days or a week, and I would just go out and buy some clothes and make up a story that I was buying it for my sister or whatever, and I would dress up. And one time I even got on a plane and went to California. I mean, this is the insanity of how I was driven. One morning I was fairly hungover, and I went to town to deposit my paycheck. I went to a local boutique and I decided to buy some clothes for Danielle. I purchased 2 outfits, 2 pairs of shoes, both size 10. While my feet were size 9 in men's, I knew from my sister Debbie's feet that I needed 1 size bigger. So I went home, everybody was working. So I changed in my bedroom. I still had my mustache, so I shaved that right away. And I looked just like a woman. Yet I did not know how to make my hair feminine. And my hair was long, longer than it is now, actually. I still wore it to my shoulders, and I could easily pass in public if I could do something with it. So then I had this thought, similar to one I had before I moved to Maui. In about 2 hours, I was at the Hyatt Regency Hair Salon, telling a tale that I was going to some costume party that evening. Within a short time, they did my hair, my makeup, and transformed me into this beautiful young woman. I even had fake nails put on. I left the salon and felt so jazzed I was in a trance to continue this journey. I decided I'd call the airport and ask how much a flight was to San Francisco, one way. My logic was, if tickets available and it's affordable, I'm going. And so against any other logical thoughts, I became focused on getting to the mainland. I figured if I could reach San Francisco, then I could stay a few days with my friends Don and Ellie. There would also be an opportunity to see other women like me, as I knew there was a significant transgender population in the city. So I was just beginning to learn about being transgender at that point. I knew Renee Richards, I knew what she was, and yet that's the kind of insanity that my mind would drive me to. Now, as the 80s progressed, my drinking increased, my drug use increased. I stayed in the restaurant business. I used to joke and say I was part of the bartending mafia in West Maui, that any bartender who worked in any restaurant could walk into any bar at any time and get a free drink waiting for them at the bar and never have to pay for it. And I could go to Kimo's, or I could go to Leilani's, or I could go to any place. I could go to the Kapalua Grill and Bar, and I knew all the other bartenders. So I never had to pay for anything, and we all did drugs, and I did it because I just didn't want to get the feelings back of being who I was. I was still running from myself. It got to be in my late 30s that the drugs and the alcohol stopped working. And when that stopped working, there was another person inside me that kind of came out. And those of you who've read the book, that was called The Mohawk Man. And that was a person who was just had no idea what to do with their lives, but was just trying to run away and just have as much freedom, not care what anyone thinks about anything. And that was like an alter ego. And that one scared me the most, because that one always told me that after I got a mohawk and everything, that I should just, I might as well just kill myself. And that's when my thoughts of suicide came in. So from the time I was in my mid-30s until I got sober, I had thoughts of suicide. And in 1999, it got the worst. When Kapalua Bay Hotel was closed for renovation, I went back east, and I had a really, really bad episode. And I stood inside this building a little bit from the roof and just contemplating on going outside and jumping off and just killing myself, because I'd just gone out and got a mohawk and I was so ashamed of my life. I quit my job. I wouldn't call my family for help. It was bad. It was really bad. Fortunately, I had a couple of friends, both nurses, who helped me out, and they finally got me psychiatric help and finally got me psychological help. And I finally got clean and sober. And that was a trip too, because I came into this 12-step program that I did not like at all. But I'll never forget the last night that I drank. It was crazy. This is how I would try to numb my feelings. Like, as I said, it wouldn't work anymore, but I would go out often and do this. I was at a time where I was going a few months without having a drink and being okay, and then Danielle would come out and I'd want to go out and I'd want to drink. 2 months to the day that I was off from both of my jobs for a change, I decided to dress as Danielle and have dinner at a Thai Chinese restaurant at the bottom of the hill down from my home. I went in and the bartender greeted me. "Hi, Breeze, I haven't seen you in a while. Would you like a vodka and Diet Coke?" This had been my drink of choice as Danielle for the past 4 years. Without even thinking, I said, "Sure, that sounds good." I had a few cocktails before dinner and then a few more after. Then I switched to chip shots. These are 12-ounce brandy snifters with Kahlua, Baileys, and Tawaka topped off with coffee. After about 4 of those, I was ready to head home when the guy came in next to me and wanted to buy me a drink. Flattered because I thought he felt I was a woman, I accepted. For the next few hours, we drank. This included 3 or 4 more vodka and Diet Cokes, plus 2 bottles of wine. My companion stumbled out about 9:30, and I followed him, feeling no pain. I drove up to my house and went home, and stayed there all of 10 minutes when I grabbed my car keys and headed back out, this time to the Ritz-Carlton. Here I met a newly married couple who thought I was their new best friend. They had some cocaine, and I helped them consume it. We began doing shots of Bailey's, then Grand Marnier, and finally finished with 1800. At last call, I made it to the valet and prayed to God to get me home without an accident. I could barely walk or see at this point. I woke in the early morning feeling absolutely terrible. I tried to eat something and immediately barfed it out. I also had diarrhea, and a couple times I actually puked between my legs while sitting on the toilet. I kept trying to sleep, but I kept getting sick. And at one point I was lying on the bathroom floor with my head resting against the toilet because it felt so cool to the touch. By early afternoon it was getting worse. I now had the dry heaves. And while I could not even try to drink water and keep it down, as soon as I would drink, it would come right back up, and that was followed by bile from inside my stomach. During this time, I've been trying to add up how many drinks that I had had down the night before, and I kept losing track when I got over 20. I didn't realize at the time, but I had alcohol poisoning. Finally, about 3:30, I was able to drink some water and not have it come back up on me. I turned on the cold water tap at my sink and splashed my face several times, trying to feel a bit better. After I wiped my face, I looked in the mirror. I saw my reflection. I saw my hair was completely disheveled. There was still a lot of makeup on my face, mostly black eyeliner, around my blotched red eyes. I had huge bags hanging from underneath them, blending into a pasty white complexion. Plain and simple, I looked awful. There was also a look of quiet desperation staring back at me. I could never really look at myself for any length of time in the mirror, but this time my stare was locked on that reflection for what seemed like an eternity. I gasped a sigh of utter sadness, and out of my mouth came these words, "God, I can't do this anymore. You have to help me." Fortunately, he did. And I found a wonderful 12-step program that I'm still a member of. And it was through finding my sobriety that things started to get better in my life. It was slow, but they started to get better. I got out of the restaurant industry. I got hired by the Maui Chamber of Commerce by a woman who had no idea who I was, but I was just told her I was honest, I would work hard, and if she hired me and trained me, I don't think it would be a mistake for her. And she took a chance and she hired me. And I did very well at the job. And as I kept doing the program and kept staying one foot in front of the other, trying to just not drink anymore, not do drugs, I continued with the psychiatric and the psychological help, and I did group therapy, and I did all kinds of therapy. And then my therapist up and was going to leave the island, and I thought I was lost. But that's when my salvation came, when I got a male therapist for the first time. And after we had met for maybe a couple months, he kept asking to meet Danielle, and I kept saying, you know, you can't meet her, she's dead. I killed her. And he looked at me and he goes, that's not how this works. Of course I knew it, and then I realized, you know, he's already got all the information anyway. So I slowly introduced myself to Kevin. So at the end of one particular session towards the holidays, he asked if he could say something to me. Kevin explained how he felt sorry for Danielle because of how horribly I had treated her. And I remember it as he said it this way: you have kept Danielle locked up, you have abused her physically, you have abused her mentally, you have never ever given her the same chances that you would have given Daniel. What would be so wrong to give her the same chance? And nobody had ever asked me this before, no one. And I sat there stunned. I didn't know what to say. And he explained, he goes, well, he asked me, what do you do on a weekend? And I told him all the things I normally did on the weekend. And he said, well, what would be so wrong to have Danielle do that? And no one had ever asked me that. So a few weeks later, for the first time in a couple months, I dressed up as who I am now and went out and did all the exact same things as a normal person, not trying to hide, not trying to sneak around, not trying to feel shamed, but just as me. And I couldn't believe how comfortable I had felt. And the next weekend I did it both Saturday and Sunday. And then we kept working on it in therapy. And I kept thinking, where I never thought that I would transition, I started thinking, oh my God, maybe I can. Even though I'm getting older, maybe I can do this. Because really I don't have to worry about anyone else but me. I just have to do this for me. And I was so afraid of slipping back into that secrecy and that hatred, that self-hatred. I had gotten to a place where I started to love who Daniel was, and then I started to be able to love who Danielle was. So about 6 months into this, we kept talking about it. We went into the next year. And I was really so close, but I just couldn't make the decision. And it was towards the holidays, and I kept going over all the costs and what it would take, and I'd have to tell the chamber and the board of directors, I'd have to do all this. Would they still give me a job? And I was just so nervous. I just sat there fidgeting, and I'll just finish the end of the chapter. Nervously, we continued at the end of the session. I was going about all the possibilities and trying to feel good about them, and I realized that I was really close to this decision. And then Kevin noticed that I was playing with something in my hand. It was my sobriety medallion, which is something I do when I'm nervous. And he says, Daniel, what's in your hands? Oh, it's my 12-step coin, I said. Oh, what does it say on it? I said, oh, Kevin, it's really cool, I answered with a smile. It has this triangle on it, and it says unity, service, and recovery. It also has the number 5 on it in Roman numerals, because that's how many years that I've been sober. And on the back of it is this thing they call the Serenity Prayer. With that, I looked at the coin, And he says, what else does it say on it? I go, what else? So I took the coin and I looked at it again. And across the top of it, I saw the words that I had forgotten. And in a very deliberate manner, I said, to thine own self be true. I looked at Kevin and I repeated the words, to thine own self be true. A third and final time, I repeated the words aloud, to thine own self be true. And that was it. I knew that my inner struggle had ended and that it was going to be okay to be me. So, those are some of my favorite readings from the book. I do other ones at different times, but I know you've all read it, and I know you must have a lot of questions, and I would be more than happy to answer anyone's questions about anything or any part of the book. So, I'll turn it over to you guys.
Thanks, Danielle.
Can I go through these? Sure. Sure. These over here are just some other terms that are known in my community. So MTF is male to female, which I'm a male to female, transsexual. Someone who is a woman but becomes a man would be a female to male, transsexual. A CD or just cross-dresser. DQ.
Drag queen.
Drag queen.
Oh.
Some people think Dairy Queen, but it's drag queen. TG is just transgender. So those are these are things that you find. And what I did, and it looks like I brought just about the right amount. So I'm so thrilled for this. And I'll pass these out here now. This is just a little list of definitions that I got off of the National Center for Transgender Equality's website. I'm sure they won't mind that I took and I printed them from there since I am a member. I'm a paying member of their organization, so I feel I have access to be able to use all their information. So these are all general information that you can find out. Easily go online if you ever want to look for more. I'm hoping I have enough. Oh my God, look at this. I have two. Oh, I have two.
Dave and I could share.
Yes, you and Dave could share one, right?
Sure.
Perfect. Look at that. Just enough. She's giving one back?
I gave.
Oh, you,
Oh,
okay,
okay.
okay.
So,
So,
I
okay.
have a question. Does Daniel still exist in your mind?
Yes, Daniel is still around. Daniel, the question was, does Daniel still exist in my mind? Yes. I had this interesting conversation with myself on the way back from seeing Kevin one day. And I realized I was getting very close to when I was actually going to transition. I'd already started doing hormones. And Daniel is such a survivor, right? He's gone through everything and survived, okay? And yet, Daniel was always that front person for Danielle. Danielle is who I am. And so Daniel is the survivor, is the guy that's still within me, the person that I learned how to be as a guy who saved my butt so many times in my life. And when I had this conversation, I said, so, Daniel, you know, I'm taking over as Danielle, what do you think? And he's like, well, are you sure? And I'd be like, yeah, I'm sure. And he'd be like, okay, sounds good to me because I'm really tired. And that's what played out in my mind when I took some deep breaths and I heard this. And it was really important, I think, for my family and my sister. My sister took it very difficult. It was very difficult for her, my youngest sister. She said to me, and when I wrote that email that you read in the book to my whole family, my sister said, you know, somehow I feel like my brother has died. And I got that. I got that. And I told her, I said, you know, I'm always going to be your brother. I said, but I'm going to be your sister too. And I think what you're going to find is that Danielle has all the best qualities that Daniel had, but even more. So yes, still part of me.
So it's kind of integrated?
Yes, I would say Daniel doesn't have to do the work anymore. You know, it's really interesting to be called, different cultures have different views of what transgender people are. So in the Hawaiian culture, they're called mahu. And so mahu kind of got put out there and became more an analogous to like the gay population. But really, in ancient Hawaiian, the mahu was really a person who was both male and female and very revered in the Hawaiian culture. is usually, you know, one of the people that would advise the king or the chief or the head of the different islands. Like, so if Maui Island had the one chief, he would have the ma who would stay with them and sleep with them and never be considered as if there was a gay relationship. This was just a revered and trusted person. And American, the Native Americans refer to us as two-spirited. So we have both the male and the female gender. And so because I had a male body, there's obviously, as I went through puberty, some of those, the testosterone changed inside me, and I became, my body and my mind became more a little bit male, but still the whole essence of me was female inside. Spiritually and emotionally, I still felt I was female. Clara?
Yeah, when I read the book, you know, my heart went out so much to the pain and anguish that you've been through. And I just wonder how, and what are the young people doing today? Is there more understanding? Are there programs and things that younger people feel the way you did, that they not have to go through so much that you did?
Very good question. And the question, and I'm only repeating it so we can hear it on camera, is that for young people now, are there more, I would suppose, options, or so they don't have to go through what I had to go through? Things have changed immensely in the last 15 to 20 years. The transgender community is such an emerging community in our nation. At one point, when they first talked about it, as far as compiling numbers, they figured there was maybe like 150,000 around 2000 or 2001. Now they estimate there's over 700,000 transgender or transsexual people in the country, which is still a very small percentage of the population. But I think it's only because more and more people have felt that freedom that they're able to talk about it and come out. They still see a lot of situations where young kids, or when they're in high school or whatnot, or then they're just coming out early in their 20s, they lose their families. The families don't understand, they don't get it. There's a lot of angst that's in our community. There's a very, very high ratio of alcoholism and drug addiction, homelessness. But it's in the media now, and it's online. There's so many more resources. On the positive side, there's many, many, many support groups out there. All the LGBT communities pretty much have a support group for transgender. They did not on this island. And so I recently, after I wrote the book, I had just started a transgender support group, and we're going to meet for the 4th time this Saturday. And it started with me and one other girl, one other male to female girl who just started transitioning. There's now 6 of us. And I've also made an alliance with a gal who's at the Maui AIDS Foundation, who ironically is half my age. She turns 30 this year, I turn 60, and she's transgender. And she knows all the girls in the local Hawaiian community. Now, here's the sad part. Most of these girls that are in the local Hawaiian community have been kicked out by these families, not understanding. Some of them are working on the streets as hookers, and if you don't believe that this can happen in Maui, it does. It happens much more frequently in Honolulu. Other good positive things that are happening are there's 2 centers for transgender kids. Medical help given for transgender children that are coming out when I first realized it, and telling their parents what they are, and they're getting resources and help, and these children are growing up in that gender from a very young age. They have medical help in Boston, and they now have a gender center in Chicago. And so they get the psychological, psychiatric help, they get all the help the parents need, they get the understanding of it, they meet with these children. All these children, when they come out, when they say exactly the same things I did, and when they're allowed to live, either if you're a little girl and thinking you're a boy, or you're a little boy thinking you're a girl, when they're allowed to live that way, there's really no problem. The problems come in is when the schools find out what's going on. And there's a big, huge case in Colorado right now of a little girl who's 6 years old can no longer go to school because they won't allow her to use the girls' bathroom. They're forcing her, if she goes to school, to use the men's bathroom. But there's, you know, there's hope. There's so much more hope when there wasn't hope. So I really think part of what I want to be as a transgender advocate, not just on Maui, but even nationally, is to try and create this awareness and say, look, I mean, I'm standing in front of you. I'm no different than you are. You know, I'm just a human being. I just happen to be born with a body of a male and a mind of a female. But now I am female, completely. I had surgery, everything. And I'm really fortunate. There's some of us that don't pass so easily in public. Virtually, anyone who meets me has no idea that I ever used to be male. So I think I'm very fortunate with that. Yes, Sharon.
You said something to me one day, and I thought it was very interesting, about discrimination. Since you've been a male and known how men looked at women,
Yeah.
now that you're a woman, you have been able to play both roles.
Yeah.
Like a lot of us say, oh, I wish I could trade places one day just so I can feel what you experience.
Yeah, the question is involved with you know, because I was a man, I know how it feels to be a man and knows how it feels to be a woman, and the interesting discrimination that's involved with each of it. Well, the last 14 months I've tried to get a job being an older woman, and I haven't been able to get a job. No one's hired me. But part of it is because probably more age discrimination than anything else, I think. And yet, when it's come close, and I've come down to a couple interviews where I've gotten to like 2 or 3 candidates, and the other candidates are men, and I'm a woman, in each instance, the man was hired instead of me. One of the things, and I'm not sure if I talked to you about this, Sharon, or not, was that I never felt comfortable with these guys that were always talking about, let's, you know, come on, let's go down the bar, let's pick up some chicks, let's go get laid. Let's, you know, all this testosterone hanging out around me. It was like, I was so bad at that. I could not do that. I'm thinking like, but I want to get to know her. You know, I'd like to go out for coffee. I want to talk to her. I want to have like, you know, some kind of relationship. I mean, I was thinking more along the lines of a woman than I, you know, I wasn't just out to get laid. And it was terrible. And then also the guys, the way one of the instances that happened just after I transitioned, and I mean, as I said, I was director of sales for the Maui Chamber of Commerce. Well, I went to a Chamber of Commerce function when I now started working for Kila Kila, and I was scared to death because only the first couple times that I'd actually been in a whole group of people since I transitioned. And some of the guys that were there that had been on the board of directors of the chamber, the ones that kind of treated me like this, you know, one of the boys club and everything, were very polite to me, very, very nice to me, but then that was it. They walked away, and anytime they talked to me, it was as if it was like, all of a sudden I had gotten a lot more dumb, a lot more stupid. Oh, she's just a woman, she won't understand this, you know? And so but I'd see that, and I'd also see how men used to treat women like that, and I was never like that. Robin can probably attest to it, I was never like that as a guy. I was pretty, you know, I loved my female friends, and I just didn't know how to treat them any other way except just as a friend and an equal. Other questions?
Yeah, talk about the 12 steps.
The 12 steps? Okay. Well, the 12 steps saved my life. They did. They did. I would not be here today probably talking to you as Danielle if it wasn't for the 12 steps. The 12 steps gave me the clarity in my life that I needed to get back to who I was. I had to get back to that little boy who was 3 years old who knew that he was a girl. And you know, it was, the 12 steps are like, it's like a roadmap for life, basically. You know, you go through these steps and you work them and you make them part of your life, okay? You make them part of who you are. And so you live and you work on those every day. Is that for me? Oh, no. Oh, okay. That you're okay. In fact, sometimes that's like my higher power, like God. That might have been God calling. Are you sure? Okay. Because, you know, he speaks to me in many different ways, so, or she. No, it's, yeah, you learn how to, what you do is you know, you have to just admit, look, I'm an alcoholic, I'm a drug addict, this is who I am. You know, my life is completely crazy and unmanageable, and I have to find some kind of power that's greater than me, that I can take my life and turn it over to, that I can just let them be in charge of everything and run the show. And then what I better do is I better look inside me and I better figure out all these things that I did wrong, and I better admit to who I am, that, you know, I am a person who has a lot of character defects and I need to work on these, and there's a ton of people that I've hurt along the way, so I better go out and I better make some amends to these people that I've hurt. And then if I continue to do that, I better do it right away to say I'm sorry instead of letting it sit and fester. And if I'm really lucky, then what I'll do is I will working on a daily basis, and I will do a lot of prayer and I'll do a lot of meditation about it, and I will continue to just every day get up and say to God, you know, I offer myself to thee to build with me and to do with me what I will, what thou wilt. I talk about the third step prayer in my book, and I say that every morning on a daily basis. But I have to do more than say it. Like in the program that I'm in, we say, you know, you can talk the talk, but you have to walk the walk. And so I try to do the 12th step on a daily basis, which is to try and help somebody else, and to try and, you know, see what I can do to work all these steps in my life. And then to give it away to someone else and to help them along the way. It's a miracle.
It was very upsetting.
Pardon?
Your book was very upsetting.
It was very upsetting.
Yeah, because it started with 3 years and what you had to go through to come to this point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you for, I mean, I understand the comment, and I've gotten that from a few different people. One girl I went to high school with read the book, and she said, I'm just so sad for you. I'm so sad for all the pain and all the suffering you went through. And I did. I went through a lot of heartache and a lot of pain and a lot of suffering, but the way I look at it is that, you know what, today I don't feel like that. Today I am a completely free woman who loves herself tremendously. And it, you know, I had to go through hell to get here. But here I am, and I plan to live the rest of my life this way. And if I can help others so they don't have to go what I through, that's what I wrote the book for. And the book not only helps people that are transgender, but it's going to help people that suffer from alcoholism and drug addiction. It will, because they're going to relate to all the feelings that I felt. Their circumstances may be different, but they'll still have that same soul sickness inside them. Thank you for your comment. Other questions? Yes?
You know, you mentioned the case in Colorado with the schools, and I wondered, is there any education for teachers so that when they see these children, and it's obvious in kindergarten. My daughter had a friend 50 years ago. They played dolls. I always wondered what happened to him, because he was obviously a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't feel comfortable raising the subject
Right.
at 50 years ago. And
Right.
I don't know what I'd do now. What would you advise in that for teachers or other parents? Or
Well, the question is, as far as what teachers, is there anything teachers can do at a very young age for kids, I think. And so there's really not anything that's being done. The sad thing is there's no roadmap for teachers with this. There's no roadmap for medical professionals with this, with the exception in the psychological and psychiatric areas. There is a World Professional Organization for Transgender Health, and that more governs on certain things as far as transitioning, but mostly for adults. But for children, everything's new. Everything's new for children, but that's what I said, that the hope that's out there is like this little girl. Some of these cases are raising awareness, and it's going to take people like myself, and it's going to take people like the National Council on Transgender Equality. It's going to take, you know, the lot of different grassroots organizations of transgender groups in Chicago and Phoenix and everything that are starting to get that awareness out there and to be able to help these people, because obviously it is. If people understood more, they'd be able to help more.
so it's really just barely beginning.
It's just barely beginning. I mean, 20 years ago, you would not see me up here talking to a group of people about this, you know, because people would be so afraid of someone who is, the connotation of someone who's transgender or transsexual, you know, immediately goes to some like sexual deviant. You know, there's a senator in Arizona who wants to make a law in Arizona that transgender people have to go into the bathroom that they were naturally born as. So technically, if I walked into Arizona today and I wanted to go to the bathroom, I'm supposed to go to the boys' room. And I can tell you this, I can't stand at one of those urinals anymore and do a very good job of that. You know, I need to squat. You know, I need to squat. And the thing is what they're afraid of is people that are pre-op, right, to go in, and maybe they don't pass quite as well as I do. Maybe they're still having their facial hair removed. Maybe they do look like guys with dresses on, but they still, they feel that they are women and they might be transitioning. So it's a very difficult thing. It's a very difficult thing, but they're not in there for any other reason except to go to the bathroom. You know, unless they're just like the handful of people that are in this country that are just, you know, sexually deviant anyway. But believe me, I was scared to death when I was pre-transition, when I would go any place and I had to use the public restrooms, just in case somebody thought something was different. You know, and I used to carry something in my wallet from my psychologist and from my endocrinologist, stating of who I was, that I was a male to female transsexual woman who was transitioning, and that I need to be respected and treated with all the same rights that anyone else has. And under federal law, we're allowed to be able to go into the gender restroom of what we present in public. So it's going to be, it's still a touchy thing. Now they're thinking, well, maybe we should create a third restroom and put a T on it. So I don't know. Yes, Michelle.
Yeah, I mean, I read the book, and I too, I mean, I couldn't put it down. But you know, I gotta admit that there were parts of it that were really difficult to read, but you know, and the amount of pain that I felt for you was real. I mean, it was real. I couldn't believe that, you know, you went through those things and you came out like you are, because I'm honored to know you, and you are a great pillar of our community. But the thing that I never really get is when you're a child and you're a female in a boy's body, what happens? Are you attracted to the boys or the men? Or, I mean, how, you know, does that mean you're gay because you're a boy attracted to a man? Or, I mean, that's
It's
confusing.
interesting. It's interesting. I just recently read a book about the Hawaiian transgender, and more with the Hawaiian transgender, when the kids or mahu, as their parents would call them, mahu, they start liking dolls, they start wanting to dress up, they start wanting to hang with their aunties and everything, and they are affectionately, they're attracted to men, okay, for the most part. But what happens is they get towards puberty and they start realizing that they're mahu or transgender, that's okay. What's interesting enough is that more often than not, those that are not in the Hawaiian group or in the you know, I don't know how Native Americans actually go through that, but more often than not, someone who is a male to female transsexual who's grown up with Western culture, okay, so any place in the United States, more often than not, they are heterosexual. So for me personally, okay, my trip is that I had very strict differences in my mind of who Daniel and Danielle was, even though that was still all one person. But as Daniel, I always liked women. I was attracted to women. All my sexual relationships were with women. But I would fantasize and I would dream about being with a man and making love with a man as thinking of myself as Danielle. So as Danielle, I always liked men. And now that I've even transitioned, I'm not really, I've never had an instance so far where I've been attracted to a woman, other than the fact that she's very pretty and that, you know, nothing like romantically. And I've been very attracted to some men. So would credit that just the way I felt about when I was younger, or maybe the enhanced use of estrogen, because I'm lucky I still get to do estrogen every day. So that's what keeps me, you know, that's what I call my girl power. So, you know, but yes, and I don't know if that confuses you more or not.
No, yeah. Oh, I think that's really good.
Yeah.
'Cause it's both.
Anyone else? Yes.
Well, I couldn't put the book down either. And I was also very interested, there was so much dialogue in it, which made it very interesting between you and your friends, how you were talking. And what came up for me now is, I figured out for a good 30 years, you were into drinking and drugs. But you always worked. How did you manage to pull that off?
I have no idea. No idea at all. I was just lucky, I guess. I don't know. I never was fired from a job. It's a miracle. I would stay up all night long sometimes and drink, and I would work a night shift in a bar, get off at 2, close the bar, leave the bar by 3, would have started drinking probably during my shift. By now I'm doing some drugs with someone, and I'm back at my house drinking and doing drugs till the sun comes up, and now I have to go to work and open the bar at 9. And I would work all the way through the day. I don't know how I did it. It's a miracle. The fact that I'm still alive today, and I had the gentleman who interviewed me from the Maui Time Weekly, Anthony Pignataro, who's also an author himself. I think when he put it in the paper, when he did the article in the paper, he says, Danielle did more blow and drank more than any person I ever have known that's still alive. So, but you know, here's the reality. This whole community is filled with people like me that work in the restaurant industry. It really is. So when you do hear of somebody dying at a very young age, it's not surprising. So it's a miracle of God that I'm still here today. So, and I still see some of the people that I used to party with. You know, they're still living the same kind of lives that they used to live, and I don't really hang out with them anymore. I don't judge them. I don't treat them badly. I'll talk with them, have coffee sometimes maybe, but I don't go into a bar and sit down and talk to them. I don't do that anymore. That's risky business for me.
So when somebody offers you a drink, no problem?
I just say, no, thank you. I don't drink. Yeah. I think about it sometimes. If I get upset or, you know, if I had a really bad day, sometimes the first thought to my head will come, okay, what I need to do is just have a shot of Jack Daniels and beer and everything will be okay. And then all of a sudden I'll realize what I just thought. And I say to myself, oh my God, I better go to a meeting. I better go back and talk to some people who are just like me in the meetings because I need some recovery. I recognize who I am, and I know, and I play it out in my mind. If I went and had that first drink, then I'm going to have a second drink, and then the next thing you know, I'm going to be right back where I was. And then this time I'll probably will lose a job, and I'll lose my house, and I'll be pushing a shopping cart, and I'll be hanging out by Safeway, and I'll be dirty, and I'll be grungy, and I'll be hitting you up for money as you're coming out, and trying to ask you for cigarettes and whatever, and I'll probably have all pasty white skin, and I probably won't be lucky enough to die, right? I'll probably still just live with like liver disease or something will finally just kill me. But I have to play out that whole scenario if I just want one drink, and then I just go, I can't have one drink. I never had one drink. I always had more. There's not enough for me to not drink. So I'm lucky. The easiest thing is to say, no, thank you, I don't drink. Or sometimes I say, I'm allergic to alcohol. It is. People will, and they'll go, oh, it's too bad. I know. So, yes?
Well, I also thought it was a great read in and of itself. Are you working on any more books? Are you writing?
You know, I'm writing. I am. I'm writing a blog all the time. I'm doing different writing and everything. I'm in a writers group that meets in Lahaina twice a month. I'm playing with different things. I'm playing about maybe doing a novel about a high school athlete who has something wrong with him and won't be revealed towards the end of the book. And either maybe he'll be transgender or might be gay. But in the meantime, I've just written a small little scene that's on a football field, and I used all my knowledge from that of growing up. So it comes out as very, very male writing, but there's also some female influence in there as I'm staring at my girlfriend who's on the sidelines as a cheerleader while I'm like in the huddle, and it's pretty. It's not bad so far, and actually the people in my writing group says you need to go back to that. You need to write another book. So I'm hoping to. I definitely want to write another book. I know it's in me. Some people have told me I should do a sequel to what I've gotten to just catch people up to where I am today and talk about what I've gone through trying to find a job in this economy and everything else that's going on and what I'm doing in my life right now. So there will be another book. I just don't know when. But I'm really itching to get into a project soon. Believe me, I can feel it. So, yes.
What's your website?
My website is www.itsalwaysokaytobeme.com.
So I have a pen pal who's transgender, lives on
Okay.
the East Coast, and I thought there's information on there that might be helpful.
There's information. There's an FAQ section. There's information like that. There's current transgender news that they can go back and back and back on, reading all that. There's a little part about me. The front page talks about a generalized view of. It's almost like there's a part, I think, in the epilogue that I take it from that's part of it. So I'm sure they'd be able to identify, and they can contact me through the website as well. And if they can't afford a book, if they can pay postage, I'll send them one for free. So wonderful, and it was such an honor to come and be here tonight. Thank you.